So, let me tell you about the moment my whole world cracked open. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 59 years old, a widow, and I live in one of those quiet neighborhoods in Oregon where everyone waves, but nobody really knows each other's business. I've worked as an office manager at a law firm for nearly 2 decades now. Caldwell and Walker. Nothing glamorous, but steady. And steady was everything after my husband died. I raised 2 kids. Emily, my daughter, just turned 32, Luke, my son, he's 29, and I spent most of my adult life, I mean most of it, making sure they never had to struggle the way I did. Every decision I made, every sacrifice, it all came back to them. Last Tuesday started like any other morning. Coffee brewing, birds outside the window, that familiar Oregon chill still hanging in the early spring air. And then I opened my email. There it was, a message from Emily. No subject line, just her name sitting there in my inbox like it was no big deal. I smiled before I even clicked on it. I remember thinking, oh, maybe it's a sweet note about the wedding. We just talked a few weeks ago about all the details. The venue in Napa Valley, the photographer, that florist she'd loved since her college days. I'd already sent $30,000 to help make it all happen. $30,000. I clicked the email, and the smile just vanished. Mom, that's how it started. Not dear mom, not hi mom, just mom, like a label, like a formality. She explained that she and Andrew, her fiancé, along with his family, had finalized the guest list, and after much thought, she wrote, they decided it was best for me to watch the wedding via live stream. Not in person. Live stream. She said Andrew's mother was particular about the guest count, wanted to keep things intimate. And then, right at the end, she included this line that felt like someone had poured salt directly into an open wound. If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Meet link we've created. Should be just like being there. LOL. LOL. She wrote LOL. I stared at that screen for a long, long time. My coffee grew cold beside me. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't cry. Something inside me just shifted, quietly, like the ground had cracked open beneath my feet, but somehow I was still standing. I hit reply. 4 words. Sure. Enjoy your big day. No emotion, no argument, no begging, just a quiet withdrawal. And I knew, deep in my bones, that those 4 words would echo louder than any scream ever could. I closed the laptop, I finished my cold coffee, and I got ready for work like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. That was the day I stopped pretending that my sacrifices meant anything to my daughter. That was the day everything began to change. The drive to the office that morning was so quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on you. Oregon's spring air still had that bite to it, but I barely noticed. My mind just kept circling the same question, over and over. How did we get here? See, I've spent 18 years at Caldwell and Walker Law, 18 years of stability. And stability was everything after my husband died suddenly when the kids were still teenagers. I remember standing in front of our old washing machine back then, bills spread across the counter, trying to figure out how to pay for both groceries and Emily's upcoming college deposit. Back then, I didn't think twice about giving up my weekends. I took extra shifts, I canceled vacations, I skipped my own birthdays. I told myself, there'll be time for me later. There never was. Every penny I saved went to Emily and Luke. When Emily changed majors twice and needed more credits, I paid. When she moved across the country for some short-lived job in New York, I covered her deposit and her plane ticket. When she called me sobbing through her second breakup at 27, I flew out there. I held her hand. I made her tea in a kitchen that didn't feel like home. When Luke wanted to buy a house with his fiancée, I co-signed the mortgage. I wrote that first $10,000 check without hesitation. I never kept score. That's what mothers do, right? But that That email made me feel like a transaction, like I had been useful and now I wasn't, like I had a shelf life, and it had expired. Back at the office, my boss Robert stopped by my desk. He's one of those rare men who actually remembers birthdays and how you take your coffee. He noticed something was off right away. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, setting a latte from the cafe downstairs on my desk. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say my daughter just uninvited me from her wedding, but instead I smiled and said I hadn't slept well. He didn't push. That small act of kindness, the coffee, the comfortable silence, it nearly undid me. After all the noise in my head that morning, it reminded me that I still existed, that I still mattered, even if only quietly. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. Emily again. Her name lit up my screen like a spotlight I didn't want shining on me. Voicemails, texts. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny." I didn't listen to any of them. Not yet. I just sat there, sipping my latte, watching the light shift across my desk, and thought, maybe it's time to stop being the one who always answers. Maybe it's time to stop playing a role in someone else's story when they won't even let you on the stage. That afternoon, I made a decision that would shift the ground beneath all of us. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something far more powerful. I was going to act. After work, I didn't go straight home. I drove to First Federal Bank, just a few blocks down from the office. Carlos, the branch manager, had helped me with everything over the years. College funds, retirement contributions. He always greeted me by name. "Mrs. Collins," he smiled wide, standing to shake my hand. "What can I do for you today?" I sat down across from him and placed my purse on the floor. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "I need to cancel a wire transfer." He blinked. "The one to the Napa venue?" "Yes, that one." Carlos hesitated. "There may be a cancellation fee depending on timing, but may I ask why?" "The circumstances have changed," I replied. I didn't elaborate. He looked something up on his screen, clicking quietly. Then he looked back at me. "You're in luck. It hasn't processed yet. Just in time." He paused. "Are you sure, Mrs. Collins? $50,000 is a significant amount." I nodded slowly. "I'm sure." $50,000. That was the amount I had planned to send next, on top of the $30,000 already gone. $80,000 total for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. I signed the necessary forms. I left the bank without a second thought. By the time I got home, there were 9 missed calls from Emily, 2 from Luke. One voicemail simply said, "Mom, please don't do this." I turned off my phone. In the kitchen, I reached for that bottle of red wine I'd been saving for Thanksgiving. I hadn't opened it back then. Emily was supposed to visit, but she canceled last minute. "Work," she said. I poured a glass, I took it out to the porch, and I sat there in the fading sunlight, just breathing. Birds chirped in the trees, a neighbor's dog barked somewhere down the street. Everything felt still. And then the memories started coming, in waves. All the birthdays I planned alone. All the holiday dinners where I pretended I wasn't waiting for a call that never came. All the small sacrifices that nobody noticed. The new shoes I didn't buy. The car I drove for 14 years. The vacations I postponed, year after year after year. I thought about Andrew's mother, this woman who barely knew Emily, yet her opinion carried more weight than mine. Her idea of family meant excluding the one person who had carried Emily through every hard season of her life. I thought about the way Emily signed off that email, LOL, as if watching your own daughter's wedding through a screen was a joke. And finally, I thought about myself. Not as a mother, not as a widow, as a woman. What did I want? Peace, dignity, a life that didn't revolve around being useful to people who only showed up when they needed something. That night, around 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Luke, still in his office clothes, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked uncomfortable, holding his phone in one hand like a shield. "Mom," he said, stepping inside before I could speak, "why aren't you answering your phone? Emily's freaking out." I shut the door calmly. "Hello to you too." He sighed, already pacing. "She says you're not coming to the wedding now, that you're being difficult." I actually laughed at that. Difficult? For not attending a wedding I was uninvited from? He shifted uncomfortably. "Andrew's parents are footing most of the bill, Mom. You know how traditional they are." I raised an eyebrow. Traditional? I already paid $30,000. I was about to give $50,000 more. That's not tradition, Luke. That's a bribe. He froze. "Wait, you were sending another $50,000? "Was," I said, "but not anymore." Luke's face went pale. "Mom, they're counting on that. The venue, the food, the—" "Not my problem anymore," I said evenly. His voice rose. "Of course it's your problem. She's your daughter." "And I'm her mother," I said quietly. "A mother who was told to stay home and watch from a screen." He ran his hairs through his head, visibly agitated. "You always make everything about yourself." And that was it. That was the moment something inside me finally gave way. "Get out of my house." "What?" "You heard me, Luke. Get out." "Mom." "No." My voice was firm but soft. "I've given everything I had, and I'm done being the villain in a story I wrote with love." Luke stood there for a second longer. Then he turned and walked out. The door clicked behind him quietly, but somehow it felt louder than any slam. I stood in the middle of my living room, heart pounding, and realized something startling. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls and a string of frantic messages from Emily. They started passive-aggressive. "Mom, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? This is childish." Then the tone shifted. "The venue just called. The payment didn't go through. We're going to lose everything if we don't pay by tomorrow. Andrew's parents are furious. They said this proves they were right about you." And then, at 3:24 in the morning, she sent, "I don't understand why you're doing this to me." I smiled into my coffee. Of course she didn't understand. Emily had grown up with my sacrifices woven so tightly into her life that she never stopped to question where the comfort came from, the security, the stability. She just assumed it would always be there, that I would always be there. But not this time. Later that morning, while I was reviewing contracts at my desk, an email popped up in my personal inbox. The subject line read, "Please don't ruin my wedding." I opened it without expectation. "Mom," she wrote, "I know you're upset about the live stream situation, but this is extreme. We've lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the remaining balance by end of day, the caterer walks. Andrew's parents are beyond upset. They're saying this proves you can't be reasoned with. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the funds first." There it was. They were willing to talk about letting me attend now that the money was gone. Not an apology, not a reflection, a negotiation. As if my presence at my own daughter's wedding could be bartered, bought, or sold, depending on how generous I was feeling. I didn't respond. I closed the email and turned back to my work. Around noon, Robert stopped by my desk again. "Lunch?" he offered. "That new Italian place just opened." I almost declined. I usually did. But something in me had shifted. Maybe it was the clarity of the past 24 hours. Maybe I just needed to sit somewhere that didn't ask anything from me. So I nodded. I'd like that. Over pasta, he told me about his grandkids, how exhausting but beautiful it was to chase after them. His eyes were soft, real. Then he paused, said gently, "Forgive me, Margaret, but you seem lighter today." I surprised myself. I told him everything about Emily, the email, the wedding, the money, and what I did. When I finished, he didn't judge. He didn't try to fix anything. He just said, "Sometimes the hardest part of love is setting boundaries, especially with the people we've given the most to." He reached across the table and briefly squeezed my hand. "I think you did the right thing." For the first time in a long time, I believed that too. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, the The sky was already dimming into shades of purple and gray. The porch light clicked on automatically. Everything looked still, peaceful even. But there was someone sitting on my front steps. As I got closer, I recognized her. Sophia. She stood up quickly, brushing invisible lint from her coat. Sophia had been Emily's best friend since 5th grade. She spent countless weekends at our house, baking cookies, watching movies, giggling in sleeping bags until dawn. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Collins," she said softly, "I'm sorry to drop by like this." "It's fine," I replied, unlocking the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, her eyes scanning the familiar walls like they held old echoes. I filled the kettle and waited. "Emily sent you?" I finally asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "She's a mess. They lost the venue, the florist dropped out, Andrew's parents are threatening to cancel the wedding entirely." I said nothing, just placed 2 mugs on the counter. "She's panicking," Sophia continued. "She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it." "Is that why you're here? To fix it?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I'm here to ask, is there anything she can say or do to change your mind?" I paused. Was there? Would an apology change the way it felt to be excluded, to be used like a bank account, to be told you're not welcome unless your money is? I looked at Sophia, still young, still hopeful. "No," I said quietly, "there isn't." Her shoulders sagged. "Not even if she apologizes?" I handed her a mug of tea. "Words are easy, Sophia, especially when people are desperate. But the people who love you, they don't wait until you cut them off to see you." Sophia looked down into her tea, nodding slowly. "I get it, even if she doesn't." She looked up at me. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Collins. You don't need to be." We stood in silence for a moment, 2 women from different generations, connected by one hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away. Sophia didn't stay long. She didn't try to argue. She just thanked me, hugged me gently, and walked back into the night. And I finally closed the door on a version of myself I had long outgrown. The wedding never happened. Not as they planned it, anyway. From what Luke eventually told me, they scrambled to find another venue, but everything was either booked or far too expensive without the money I had once promised. They ended up doing a small backyard ceremony a few weeks later, just a handful of relatives and Andrew's parents. I wasn't invited. And this time, I didn't need to be. In the weeks that followed, Emily sent one more email, a long one, emotional, half apology, half justification. I read it once. Then I archived it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There's a strange peace that comes with letting go, not in rage, but in clarity. For the first time in decades, I woke up not wondering who needed something from me, not bracing for another guilt trip disguised as love. I made a new rule for myself. If my presence is negotiable, then so is my effort. I go to work now. I read novels, actual novels for pleasure. I joined a pottery class last month. I have dinner with friends who see me, not what I can give them. And I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm. Sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one you finally give to yourself.